Okay, the whole purpose of this video is to show how to make my great-grandmother's Irish soda bread. And we always referred to her as Granny McAteer, at least my mother did. And she passed away shortly after this photo was taken, which I think was taken in the early 1900s, I believe. So this recipe is quite old. More on that later. Now, my lovely daughter, Anya, wonderful Irish name, is here helping me tonight with the making of the Irish soda bread. She's already put in the 4 cups of flour, and the recipe will be down below this, and you can see it later. Now this recipe takes, go ahead and measure it, what was it, 2 tablespoons? 2 to 3 tablespoons of caraway, which sounds like a lot, but that's what it calls for.
A little bit extra. There you go.
And it also takes, which is surprising, a teaspoon of baking powder and a teaspoon of baking soda. And I always had trouble envisioning eating baking soda, but that's what this recipe uses.
Crumbly bits.
Now here is the mystery that goes along with this recipe. Whenever I make this, it always seems that the dough is going to be way too dry, because what we're going to do now is cut in a quarter pound of butter, stick of butter, into the sugar and the caraway and all the other dry ingredients. And as you watch this, you're going to realize, wow, that doesn't look like it should ever make a dough that'll come together. But lo and behold, as we process it, it will. Now, one of the tricks to this recipe is I used to use my hands and just mash it all together constantly like the original recipe did. But I found that it always stuck to my fingers so much I lost a lot of dough. Tonight, what I'm going to show you is we're going to use 2 regular kitchen table knives, and we're going to cut it in using these, and eventually you'll see that the dough will mature into a nice bread dough. So here we now have the butter all chopped up in little chunks and thrown in, and now we start working it with 2 knives. And you want to do it, or you want me to do it?
I'll hold it.
You'll hold it, okay. Anya's going to hold the camera, and this doesn't look like it's ever going to make a dough. And probably as we go along here, because this takes a while, we'll probably stop the camera for a while rather than bore you with 10 minutes of doing this. Now this looks like one dry mess that'll never ever turn into a dough. But I just keep slicing and slicing and slicing with the knives. And eventually it will. It just does not look like it should work. Now who came up with this recipe over 100 years ago? Well over 100 years ago. I don't know how far back it goes. But here we are, following my great-granny's recipe. Now the reason I decided to film this tonight is I have a Facebook friend by the name of Mitch Llewellyn, and he posted a picture of Irish soda bread the other day. And my birthday happens to be on St. Patrick's Day on top of that. And typically right around this time we make Irish soda bread. And Mitch inspired me. So I decided I'd film just how this recipe works, because it just doesn't look like it should work. But it makes the most wonderful, wonderful Irish soda bread. It's still kind of powdery and dry and doesn't seem to have much body to it, but just keep going. And I don't know how long this takes, I don't remember. It's been a while since I've made it. It must take 10-15 minutes of doing this. So we'll come back to this as it matures. So at this point, Anya's cutting away here, and it's getting to where the recipe describes it as being crumbly. It's not sticking or adhering very well yet, but the butter is pretty well chopped up into very, very fine particles. And at this point, we're going to add 2 beaten eggs, which the recipe calls for. So here we go. All right. You can scrape that out of there if you want to. So get as much of the egg as we can. It's still not much liquid, and it just doesn't seem like it should amount to much. So we'll keep going with this, and we'll come back in a few minutes. Alrighty, it's starting to get a little crumbly looking. We haven't added the buttermilk yet, nor have we added the raisins or currants. We hunted all over town for currants. Now here's the buttermilk going in.
All of it?
It's 1 1/4 cups, all of it. Yeah. My mother used to love to drink buttermilk. I never acquired that taste. I mentioned Mitch Llewellyn earlier. Mitch and I met because we both have something in common. We met on a Yahoo news group a long time ago because we both went through heart surgery. I had a 6-artery heart bypass, and I forget what Mitch had, but something along those lines. And we got to know each other. Eventually, Mitch read my book, 300 Zeros, about hiking on the Appalachian Trail, which is actually where I had my heart problem crop up, although it wasn't due to the hike, it was genetic. And so we keep corresponding back and forth about food. Seems to be more of an interest than ever after the heart surgery because you have to be more careful with your diet. See, it's starting to get a little bit doughy looking. Not particularly like a pancake dough or anything, but more like a bread dough. And down deep, it tends to be dry in the bottom, so you have to dig way down in and pull it up. But it is starting to take form. Okay, now we're adding the currants and the raisins together. And there's quite a bit of them. Almost looks like too many, doesn't it? We stir those in too. Now we probably could use one of these, we have in fact, one of these big KitchenAid bread making machines, or cooking machines, baking machines, whatever they call them. Problem is, I think that this is such a dry dough when you start, you'd have more flour flying around the house than you would actually in the bowl. And, you know, this is the traditional way of making this, and it's fun. So we have quite a, what do we have? Let's see, 2 cups of raisins and 1/3 cup of currants. The currants were hard to find. We hunted around most of the grocery stores around here. We live in Sarasota, Florida. Couldn't find them. Used to have them years ago. Finally found some today. My daughter picked them up at Whole Foods. They had them. So they were in the bulk containers. And I think my grandson will probably enjoy nibbling on some of those currants too. He likes fruit. And this recipe would be his great-great-great-grandmother's recipe. So it's going back a ways. So it's coming along nicely. It's starting to take shape. In a few minutes, it'll be, I think, mixed enough that we'll actually be able to make the loaf. But we can stop. All right, now we're at the stage where we pretty much have a loaf. Normally it's a little drier than this. This one's actually a little more moist. Maybe I included too much buttermilk, perhaps. Take a 9-inch pie plate, and like I said, normally it's a little drier, and I can usually just pick it up with the 2 knives, set it in the pan, but it's a little bit sticky tonight. So I'm just going to flip it over. Hopefully it'll flip out. We shall see. Feels like it's pretty simple.
It's coming. It's coming. Might have to peel it with the knife.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little stickier than it normally is. Not too bad, but a little bit. Okay. So Back when I used to use my fingers, I'd lose half the loaf to the fingers. So this is a little tighter. Alright. Now we move it over a little more into the center. Make it as loafy looking as we can here. Love the terminology. Alright. Then we cut a deep cross into the dough, making into the quarters that they call farls. They also have in Ireland, they have something called potato farls, which I love. So we just put a sort of a cross right across it. One way this way, and one way this way. And it'll tend to seal back together when it cooks, but it gives it a nice visual effect. Okay, that's our Irish soda bread. Now we bake it for 375 degrees for about an hour. We cover it for the first half hour with a piece of foil. Now, I don't know what they did in the traditional old days. They didn't have aluminum foil kicking around. Then after a half hour, you take the foil off and you finish baking the bread. That should be our Irish soda bread. We'll see in about an hour. Give it a shot.